Hello everyone, Oli here, and this is my review of The Evil of the Daleks, the ninth and final story of the fourth season of classic Doctor Who, starring Patrick Troughton as the second Doctor. The Evil of the Daleks is also the 36th story overall, it's 7 episodes long, and is written by David Whittaker. Of all 7 episodes, only episode 2 survives, and as far as I'm concerned, I don't think there's any surviving clips from any of the missing episodes, but telesnaps of all 7 episodes do exist, I believe. So the plot of the story is as follows. The Daleks draft the second Doctor into distilling the human factor. Once implanted, it will make the Dalek race invincible. Jamie's faith in the Doctor is stretched to its limits, as the Doctor appears to be collaborating with the Daleks. The Doctor has a few tricks up his sleeve, but then again, so might the Daleks. So, the evil Daleks? Absolutely incredible. In fact, it's also A. One of my favorite stories of season 4, B. One of my favorite Charlton stories, C, and it's also my favorite ever missing episode. And this is actually the missing episode I actually wanted to return the most, or at least be animated the most compared to all the others. And episode 7 itself is actually quite awesome. So, the plot was very well done. It's very easy to understand and it's paced very well, even though it's a 7-parter, and some 7-parters do have this issue of the plot being basic but just has a few padding, have bit of padding. But this story, and amongst other a handful of 7-parters, actually don't have this issue. And I thought it was a brilliant idea to continue the story from where the Faceless Ones left off, with the Doctor and Jamie saying goodbye to Ben and Polly and looking for the TARDIS, and then they actually do find the TARDIS being wheeled away by someone who turns out to be Waterfield. I think he was taken to his antique shop, and then the Doctor and Jamie end up in back in 1866. And then that's all the other story, and that's how the story goes down from that point. So the concept of the Daleks having the mental capability of the humans, well, pre-developed humans, was quite clever, and I liked how they were able to tell the ability from right from wrong, compared to the other Daleks who have no concept of what's right and wrong whatsoever. They just basically kill people on instinct, and well, pretty much kill anyone that's not a Dalek, to be precise. Yes, and obviously the human Daleks actually fought what against was very wrong. The production was well done, and I think the direction was quite good as well. Pardon me. I like the Victorian house set. I believe it was actually a real house that was used, and as I said, the direction by Derek Martinus was brilliant. And I think this is probably his best story he's directed for Doctor Who so far. I think he's directed some other good episodes as well. I can't really remember or named some of the episodes he directed from the top of my head, but I think this one is actually the best. And the story has some very good cliffhangers, especially in episode 1 where Kennedy, the guy that was, I think he was helping move the TARDIS back into the antique shop. I think he was either one of the goons. I'm not even sure. I can't really remember, but I think he was involved in the plot. I think he came across a Dalek, and then it ended. And then when episode 2 started, he ends up getting killed by the Dalek. And that scene was actually used for the season 6, for season 5, the finale of season 5, the wheel in space, with the Doctor showing Zoe what the danger should be going up against. But when I get to the wheel in space review, I'll explain a bit more what's going on there. And I like the fact that in episode 6 cliffhanger as well, when the Doctor, Jamie, Waterfield, and Maxtable, who was actually working with the Daleks or siding with the Daleks, I think it was a mixture of both. I think they all came across the Dalek Emperor, who actually we see for the very first time in Doctor Who, and I think this is actually his only appearance in Classic Who before he actually returns in the new series with in season 1. I think that's when they find out that the TARDIS was actually in Skaro the whole time, and then the Emperor Dalek pretty much forces the Doctor to use the human factor. No, he actually wants the Doctor to use the Dalek factor and use it against the humans across time. So, enough about the story itself and the production now. we get on to the characters who I think were, other than the Doctor and Jamie, they're all quite good. The acting was superb, I must say. And now let's get on to a bit more of the characters. Charlton, amazing as always. I think his performance was probably one of the best here. And we even get to see a darker side of the Doctor, as he does have a habit of manipulating people to his own ends. But obviously not for good, but he just wants to use his. He tends to try and use other people around him to for his own good and to defeat the bad guy as well. We actually see it in this story. We actually see it here, and he actually does this to his own companion Jamie, and he uses Jamie's good nature when he and Kemmel were rescuing Victoria. More on them later, and then when Jamie obviously found out, he understandably was not happy with the Doctor at all. We have a nice piece of dialogue between the two, and Jamie actually does find out what the Doctor was actually doing with Jamie, and wow, and we actually do see the Doctor manipulate again in the Tomb of the Cybermen, the following story. And I think in the Tomb of the Cybermen it was a bit more, it's a little less subtle than it actually was in the Evil of the Daleks. But when I get to the Tomb of the Cybermen review, I'll explain a bit more on that. Speaking of Jamie, he does continue to impress here. Now that Ben has gone, Jamie takes over the reins from the action companion, and he actually does so as well. I mean, he does get some fairly good scenes. I mean, I remember he gets into a fight scene with Kemmel in episode 3. Yeah, no, episode 4. He has a nice little fight with Kemmel before Jamie actually wins, and they become fast friends, and they both decide to rescue Victoria together. And also, Jamie gets into a sword fight with another minor character as well, Alpha Terror, and that was. I mean, I wish this story actually did exist, because if it did exist, I'm pretty sure the story. I'm pretty sure the scene itself would have been very good to watch. And obviously Fraser Hines, I think he now that Ben and Polly have gone, I think you definitely see the best of Jamie. So the best of Jamie, and obviously Fraser Hines does a good job playing Jamie, even though the story can tend to be a bit, yeah. But obviously Fraser Hines shines in my opinion. We also gain a new companion in Victoria Waterfield. She doesn't appear in the beginning, but she makes her first appearance in the surviving episode 2, when she's being held captive by the Daleks and she is tortured by them. She doesn't meet the Doctor until the end of episode 7. No, not until episode 7. Not at the end of episode 7, when they all meet on Skaro, and because she actually comes aboard the TARDIS when her Father Edward is killed by the Daleks when he was trying to save the Doctor. No, he actually. Yeah, he sacrificed himself to save the Doctor, so when the Doctor was able to get away with Victoria, he actually promises Edward that he will look after Victoria, so they all go on. So, and then Jamie obviously asks what's going to happen to Victoria, and the Doctor's like, oh, we'll take her with us. And on my thoughts on Victoria, even though this story, she doesn't actually do a whole lot, but when we get to season 5, she actually does quite a bit, and I like Victoria. I would say she's one of my favorite companions, and I believe she's also one of the more underrated and underappreciated companions, mainly because most of the episodes during her tenure are actually missing. But there's a good bunch that actually exist, and she's actually really good in all of them. And despite her tendency to scream, she's actually quite clever, considering the fact that her dad was a scientist, and she does get an opportunity to be a complete badass at times. And I think her relationship with Jamie was quite cute, and it was quite obvious that they fell for each other. And you can see a bit of ship teasing a little bit. Even when she departs and from the deep, they actually do kiss, even though it's actually a kiss on the cheek. But yeah, she does have a good relationship with Jamie, and she also has a good relationship with the Doctor as well. Even though it's a bit more underrepresented compared to when the two was with Jamie, but whenever the Doctor and Victoria do share some scenes with each other, it's very good. I mean, they definitely have a good chemistry between the two of them, and it was very much like Susan and the first Doctor. The side characters were good also. I really liked Edward Waterfield, Victoria's dad. He was responsible for the TARDIS being taken, but his actions weren't malicious to say the least. He was actually worried about Victoria's safety, and he was wanted to make sure she was safe and all that. And obviously, his partner Max Zubo, I think they're two different characters. I mean, obviously, there's a scene in episode 2 when the Doctor finds out it was the Daleks that are pretty much behind him being 8066. I mean, the Dalek was telling the Doctor to be a part of their plan, and obviously, if Dad was like, Doctor, I beg you, please just do what they say. I want my daughter to be safe. And obviously, Maxible was just there smoking his cigar, just like, just do it, just because I want everything to be successful and all that. And obviously, speaking of Maxtable, his full name is Theodore Maxtable, and he was obviously the side villain other than the Daleks themselves. And as I mentioned before, he was obviously working with the Daleks, or it was pretty much their cheerleader, wanting their plan to succeed. And when he was given the Dalek factor, he was really good, and it was quite creepy as well with his monotone voice. And the way he actually killed Kemal in episode 7, towards the end of episode 7, was haunting. I mean, he was like, he and Kemal were fighting on the cliffside, and obviously the Dalek was like, kill, 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 kill. And obviously we have, I think, Max Tibble was like saying, kill, 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 kill as well. And then obviously he pushes Kemal off the cliff. And obviously Kemal is quite strong. He's a Turkish wrestler, and obviously because of the Dalek factor, Max Tibble was able to gain some superhuman strength. Speaking of Kemal, I actually liked him as well, despite the fact he doesn't actually speak, but he still impresses. As the saying goes, action speaks louder than words. I liked how he and Jimmy pretty much became allies after their fight, and they decided to rescue Victoria together. And he does have a cute relationship with Victoria, even though he doesn't really speak, but she kind of understands him. And then I think there was one part when Victoria saying, "I will look after you, Kemal." He was actually smiling. But he's probably thinking, how can this small girl look after me? But it was quite good. It was a quite good scene between the two of them. Now, onto the Daleks themselves. Man, they were brilliant. And considering the fact we actually have two different Dalek factions, pretty much for the first time ever, we actually see another two two different Daleks compared to the one Dalek faction you usually see, but it's rather minor compared to, let's say, in 80s Doctor Who, where you had the Imperial Daleks and the Renegade Daleks. Even though they were both bad guys, but in here, but it's actually good versus evil, because you had the human Daleks with the human factor the Doctor put in the Daleks, and then I think and the Doctor actually named three of them. I think one of the names was Alpha, Beta. I think the name was Alpha, Beta, and Omega. And the Doctor used the marker to help us know which one was which, and actually does come in handy when the Doctor arrives. The Doctor and Co arrive in Skaro, and then one of the Emperor's Daleks was trying to impersonate the human Daleks and saying, "Oh, I am Alpha," or whatever. And then the Doctor realizes this and then decides to push the Dalek off the cliff because he knows he put markers on his human Daleks. And of course we had the Dalek Emperor's Daleks, and to help us when they all got onto Skaro, the Daleks the Daleks that were actually working with the Emperor, they had like their black heads, and then obviously the human factor Daleks, they were just the normal Daleks. And I actually like the human Daleks because they were very adorable with the childish mentality. I remember the episode 5 cliffhanger, even though that's one of the more weaker aspects of that story, but I liked it. I mean, after it progresses from there, they were like, Dizzy, Dizzy, Dizzy Doctor, Dizzy Daleks. And they were like trains. And obviously, they had the childish mentality. And then when they started like developing a little bit, they do have a conscience, and they actually fight against what is actually wrong, even as going as far as actually killing and destroying their own Daleks. So speaking of the Emperor Dalek, this is actually his only classic Who appearance, as I mentioned earlier before. But unless you do count him coming back in Remembrance of the Daleks, but that was actually Davros pretending to be the Emperor Dalek. I really liked the design of the Emperor Dalek. I mean, he was obviously a part of the set, and we obviously had the Dalek voice, just very domineering and quite scary to say the least. It was part of the setting was really good. I would even go as far as I would go as far as saying that the Emperor Dalek we see in this story, the design was actually better than the parting of the ways which we see the Dalek Emperor again. But obviously the Dalek Emperor was CGI, and then obviously the Emperor Dalek here was just basically a set, part of the set, and that was quite good as well. I mean, I really like that. So, the Evil of the Daleks is also the very last Dalek story for a very long time, as this was actually intended to be the last ever Dalek story at the time it was written, because Terry Nation, he actually wanted to have the Daleks appearing in America, but obviously that didn't work out well, so I think after that the Daleks were put aside, but I think there were plans to try and incorporate the Daleks again and for like to be like a main villain of the story. I think Wheel in Space was a good example. It would have been it was basically a battle between the Daleks and the Cybermen, but Terry Nation did not want the Daleks to be appearing alongside the Cybermen, but we don't actually see a Dalek versus Cybermen story until series 2 in the new series Doomsday. Remember, if this was actually the very last Dalek story ever, I would have been actually very satisfied. I mean, it was an epic way for the Daleks to go. I mean, obviously we do have a feeling they would have come back eventually when after the Doctor, Jamie, and Victoria departing the TARDIS, the eye stalk just you see the Daleks eye stalk just rise again and complain that this may not be the final end the Doctor actually anticipated. But we won't be seeing another Dalek story until Season 9's Day of the Daleks, which is actually well into the John Pertwee era. But we do have some off mentions of the Daleks during from that point, and I think a Dalek would actually appear in like the Doctor's memory in the War Games, minus one of their eyes, minus one of their lights on their heads. So onto the issues of the story, even though it's fairly minimal, but as I mentioned before, the episode 5 cliffhanger was it was very odd to say the least. It wasn't like, oh my god, what the hell's gonna happen? I mean, it wasn't really anyone in peril. We just see the Jimmy walking in and finding the Doctor playing with the Daleks. But I do feel that since some characters were a bit unneeded, like Ruth Maxtable, for instance, she doesn't really, and the maid Molly, I think her name was, they didn't really do much in that story. And I think from the point where the Doctor and everyone goes to Skaro, they don't really appear anymore. But to actually overlook these and if this was a great way to write off the Daleks for at least another 5 years, and a great way to end the 4th season, so I'll be giving this story a perfect 10, ladies and gents. Woohoo! Whew. So that is it for season 4. Stay tuned for my ranking of all the season 4 episodes. And thanks for watching this review. Let me know what you thought of this review and this story, and of course, stay tuned, everyone. See you later.